Well, if you are a reader and you love short stories, you love to have a book or just a collection of short stories that you can just pick up, and a bit like having a bit of a snack in front of you, isn't it? You can just pick up and have a couple of mouthfuls and then continue on with what you're doing. Short stories are great like that. Then can I steer you towards a collection that has just been unveiled in the form of the winners of this year's Roly Sussex short story competition. This is organised through the English Speaking Union's Queensland branch. And it's all about just a celebration of the English language and short stories as an art form, as a literary form, I guess. The winners have just been announced, named in honour of Emeritus Professor Roly Sussex, one of Australia's great linguists and a lifetime promoter of clear and precise and creative language. And one of the joint winners in the open division is from our own backyard, Roxeena Bidgood. She lives out in Miles, and her story, Music Played in a Cafe, which is just a beautiful tale about the charm of a musical instrument given a new life, and in doing so creating a new outlook on life for its accidental owner.
I remember as a young child being really interested in writing. I think it's something that I've always done. It sounds like a cliche, and I think all writers do say the same thing, that it's something, I don't know, something that we are rather than what we become. I think writing is the thing that allows me to make sense of the world. I was a very quiet child, and writing things down made me understand what was going on, I think. And so I've always written, really.
And so even to the point of, like, you know, keeping a diary and that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. Even as a young child, I used to journal,
right, yes.
Particularly in high school. I did have times where I did it religiously, and then other times where it fell away a little bit. But over the years, I have done a lot of journaling. I've kept that up. I still do it all the time. I've got books and books and books filled with notes. So, yeah, it's something that I can remember doing forever. And wanting to be a writer, but becoming a writer is not something you just decide to do, because it is very difficult to know where your paths are when you're writing. Yeah. And it's very difficult to decide, okay, I'm going to be a writer, because there's so many steps involved in getting there, I think.
And also, I think it's one of those things where, you know, if you're in high school and you go into the careers counsellor, you know, they will naturally steer you towards journalism, but that's not necessarily the sort of writing that everyone who has a yen to write wants to do, though, is it? And I assume that wasn't the case for you.
And I guess there's also an element of fear in announcing that you're a writer, because it's so personal, and the fear of telling someone you're a writer and having negative feedback from that is really, really difficult. And I think that it's one of those things that you don't just go out and say, oh, I want to be a writer, and you keep that inside you for a very long time.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Because inevitably they'll ask, well, what have you written? Where can I read your work? And all these questions that sort of more equate to making a living than actually, you know, being a writer as such.
I know. I remember talking to someone once, and I couldn't get my words out. I was trying to explain something, and this person said to me, oh, and you're supposed to be a writer. And I said, well, I do like it when I can edit things.
That's right, exactly. And take the time to come up with the right word, you know.
That's right. It doesn't necessarily come to mind straight away, but I do like that process, the editing process in between, where I can sort everything out and make sure it is right and the words are right. That's why I write, and that's why I don't speak, I guess.
Yes, that makes sense. See, writers, you can wait until you've got it and in exactly the form that you want, and then share it. You know, whereas when you speak, you don't always have that luxury, do you?
No, you don't. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
It is the story has won you the joint top prize in this year's competition, Music Played in a Cafe, is a beautiful story. I just read it then, and just such a beautiful story. Tell me how it came about.
Well, firstly, thank you. I do like people telling me my stories are beautiful. That's lovely. And I'm pleased that people enjoy them, which is really nice. I do come from a family where music has always been a very important part of the family. I learnt music myself when I was young. I learnt the piano, and we were always all of us in brass bands, and other members of my family have gone on to be in orchestras, not professional orchestras, but played in orchestras all our lives.
Right.
My sister played the violin. And she won't like me saying this, but I can remember her practicing her violin in the early days and me hiding under my blankets so I didn't have to listen.
It's right up there with the bagpipes as an instrument that only sounds good once you've reached a certain level of competency, I think.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, all instruments are. I mean, Louis Armstrong was a beginner at some point, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, add the trumpet to that list then, yes.
Yeah, so she learnt the violin, and the story behind her violin was always fascinating to me. My father bought that violin. He told me I was only talking to him about it 2 days ago, and he said he swapped it for a a banjo and a pound at a music shop.
Wow.
And it was an old violin which had been sitting in the rafters of someone's shed, and the whole of the case had disintegrated and the violin was left. And my sister used to take her violin to lessons in a pillowcase. So just the history of that violin, and it's an old French violin. It's not anything really expensive, but it is an old French violin, which is where I got that part of the story from.
Right, yeah.
Which I thought was just fascinating. It's a wonderful story.
Absolutely.
And then my sister is a member of the Australian String Teachers Association, and they go on a tour of Europe or wherever every few years, and I went with her to Europe. And if there are any Australian String Teacher Association people who went on that tour, I hope they're listening and enjoy this story. But they talked about their instruments. It was just a revelation the way they spoke about their instruments, because they would talk about buying their instrument, and they'd, go into the instrument shop, the string shop, and look at the different violins, and they'd try this one and they'd try that one. And when they tried the one that was theirs, they knew immediately that that's the violin that they wanted.
Wow.
And of course, Harry Potter's wands came to mind.
Yeah, that's right.
Read Harry Potter?
Yes,
the wand chooses the wizard, Harry?
It chooses the wizard, that's right. And as you say in the story, the violin chooses the player. Yeah.
And that really stuck with me as well. So that ended up being in the story too. So yeah.
So obviously, even though you didn't play the violin,
No.
It was your sister's, but the way you write about the beauty of the instrument, and that atmosphere of being in a music shop and having them all there to choose from, you obviously had an appreciation for at least the beauty of the instrument itself and the craftsmanship. I wouldn't imagine you can manufacture that part of the story at all.
No, I guess because I've been around the instruments all my life, and that beauty of that violin that my sister had, of course, really resonates with me. And it's not just a violin shop, I guess it's the whole idea of music shops and the way music shops were. Now you walk into them and they're beautifully laid out and everything's new and everything's lovely. But that idea of a second hand and an antique and let's fix something that's old and value something that's old, that idea I really like.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Although I would argue that even modern music shop, though, even though they don't resemble in any way the one you described in the story, all musical instruments, though, are beautiful. Do you agree?
Yes.
I mean, even if someone picks them up and says, "Oh, this is a cheap brand," but even the cheap brands look beautiful. I was in a music shop the other day, and there were predominantly guitars, acoustic and electric guitars, and saxophones sort of on the shop floor, but they all looked beautiful. Even though I don't play guitar, you can appreciate the beauty, and I don't think there's any such thing as an ugly musical instrument. So I think in that sense, even modern music shops are still have that sense of awe when you walk in, as the old ones that you described in the story, I think.
Yes. Oh, I agree. And there's nothing more beautiful than an instrument of any age. I've got a really old trumpet that I used to own, and I've just pulled it out of its case after many years. And even the tarnished look of that instrument and the shape of it and the way the tubing curves around, it is beautiful still, even though it's not new. Then you get those brand new shiny ones that look just stunning. It's
almost afraid to play them, I would imagine. Yes, most definitely. But
I agree.
This is what I'm curious, and it's I guess in any story there's always that combination of what is actual fact and what's been made up, and those two worlds tend to sort of mesh pretty seamlessly in it, so almost sort of hard to pick up what's true and what's not. But the dialogue, though, is so true. The dialogue with your daughter and your kids, and them sort of giving you lip about buying this thing that you were probably never going to use, and an impulse buy and that sort of thing. So is that based on reality? Do you have teenage daughters like that?
No, I guess I did have teenage daughters, but no, not really. I think that's just all something that I can imagine, or something that I've been able to create because I can imagine what it's like.
Right.
I guess you do. You come across people in life all the time who are skeptical about things and who, think if it's not new, it's not worth anything. And just, thinking of that and putting that idea into the story was what came about there.
Yep.
Also, I guess being a mother, you do know that your children sometimes think you're going a little crazy, and you have plans, or you say things, and you know the look that they have on their face when you say particular things. So I guess all of that does come into it, and you do certainly draw on life experiences and the things that have happened to you to write your stories. But look, the whole thing is pure fiction, really, apart from those points of influence that I had outside writing the story.